Hi, thank you for watching this demonstration video on how to perform the vertical landing in the AV-8B Harrier. So in this instance, what I'm going to go through is making sure that you have the correct performance in order to perform the landing, and then setting yourself up for and performing the landing in a straight-in type scenario. So perhaps imagine that you're flying into a forward operating base. You don't need to do the pattern, you just need to pick up the designated landing area and land at the given fob. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to open up the VRES page, and assuming that you already have your values properly inputted from the start of the sortie, that is the operating weight, the basic drag index, and then all of the field data, including elevation, runway heading, wind, and outside air temperature, you'll get a wet and dry figure for your fuel plus water. So in this case, we're going to be doing wet because it's about 20 degrees outside, so that gives us a figure of 2,957 minus 500 for the water, so we know that we can land with 2,458 pounds. 2,458 pounds. If we look down there, we're at 1,500, so more than enough margin for a good landing. So the next thing we're going to do is just set up our EHSD, which I've already done here. You can see I've got the designated landing area boxed with the system designation. That will become useful in a moment. And I've got my course line through for the intended landing heading, which is going to be directly into wind. Okay, so let's bring the scale down just to make that a little bit easier on the lineup as we come in. And we're just going to start turning left and descending. At the same time, I'm going to use sensor select down to open up the T-pod screen. And this is just a little trick. You can do this, sorry, not T-pod screen, the DMT screen. You can do this with either the T-pod or the DMT. Okay, here we go, and we can see that the designated landing area is exactly on the center of that helicopter pad, DHLA, designated helicopter landing area. Okay, on the right MPCD, I'm just going to open up the HUD page again. Okay, I'm going to completely close the throttle, and I'm just going to try and descend and line myself up. So, a bit like the straight-in landing for an airfield, where you'd start 12 miles out at 2,000 feet and then descend at 8 miles, I'm going to descend down to 1,100 feet, because I know my field elevation is about 94 feet here, and then I'm going to start descending for it at about 4 miles. So we're just flying almost parallel to the intended landing direction right now. And if you're anything like me, you might actually find this harder than performing the vertical takeoff, vertical landing visual circuit. Okay, while we're descending, we're going to start configuring. So we're going to make sure the stow stop's in the clear, otherwise nozzles won't get back. We're going to bring our flaps down to auto. We're going to switch into the VSTOL master mode. I should have done that first. Water's going to come on, and our gear is going to come down. Okay, let's start turning in, and simultaneously let's bring the nozzles back to 60. That gives us a nice controllable airspeed to start off with. So we're at about 5 miles now, and I'm sort of doing a wide squared off base leg here. We've got plenty of fuel for the demonstration. I'm just going to set my bingo to 500 pounds just to give me a warning in case I do exceed my fuel limit. And we're still coming down to about 1,100 feet. You can bring the scale down as low as you like. In this case, I'm just going to bring it down to 13 so that I can get a good view of where I need to be. There we go, we're coming up 1,100 feet. Bit of power, bit of pitch, just to bring ourselves up. And really important is to trim the straight and level attitude. Okay, we'll start turning left now. Let's see if we can bring that scale down. and drop that into descended mode so that we get a really good look at that course line. Okay, this is quite slow, so I'm going to bring the nozzles forward to about 40 just to increase my ground speed, just so that we're not here all day. So at this point, ideally you want your witch's hat on the horizon if possible, but more important is to control the AOA and to meet some checkpoints. So at 2 miles we want to be at about 500 feet, and then at half a mile we want to be at the key, which is 325 feet. So we're still lining ourselves up there. We're at about 800 feet or so. Drop the power a little bit to increase our rate of descent. There we go. Now we're on the course line, so let's turn and use some rudder to help us get the nose around. Okay, and if I quickly flick into air to ground master mode, you can see our designated landing area is just up ahead. Okay, we're at 2 miles and we're at about 500 feet above the intended point of landing, which is great. Intended point of landing is about 94 feet. So 10 units of AOA. I'm going to start bringing the nozzles back to 60 just now, and adjusting the power to maintain the rate of descent. 1.7 miles, and we're a little bit low. This is roughly where we want to be for the landing itself, about 325 feet above the designated landing area. So we're just going to adjust for the straight and level at 10 AOA. Notice it's quite nose high. Looking over the nose, we can see our DHLA is just off the nose to the left there. .8 miles, 0.7, just coming left a bit for that landing point there. And we'll bring the nozzles back to 84 now. And we're trying not to exceed 12 units of AOA, and we're descending for 150 feet above ground level. Looking at our ground speed there, just busted that AOA slightly. And we're going to bring the nose down and trim it. Can be quite tricky to get the closure rate right. As you're getting close like this, your airway matters less and less. As long as you don't exceed 12 units of airway, it doesn't matter if your airway is a little low. Just looking over the nose there, there's the DHLA. And we're at about 250 feet, so that's about 290, so that's about 190 feet over the ground. So we're looking for about 150 feet here. Nice solid rate of closure. Bring the nozzles back to 82 there. You can use the nozzles a little bit to get yourself into position. We're just going to raise the nose slightly to stop the ground speed. Okay, so we're slightly high, we're at 170 feet above the ground. And now we're just looking outside and we're going to descend down to 50 feet above the ground. Using my two vehicles here as my reference point. Going to rest the rate of descent at around 50 feet. Verify that you're above your intended landing area, which we are, and then bring the throttle back. Nice solid rate of descent. You need to commit to it at this point. Let it descend. And just looking outside, when you're at about 20 feet above ground level, go throttle idle and hold the brakes. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. I did make a few mistakes, truthfully. So you will find that if you are doing, for example, the practice patterns, which is what really you should be practicing, because that is how you will land when you're on the boat, and 9 times out of 10 it's how you will land when you're at a fob. You will find that you need to vary the key. So either bring it closer or bring it further away by 0.1 of a mile, 0.2 of a mile. The reason for this is different headwinds give you different deceleration effects. So obviously the stronger the headwind, the faster you will decelerate. The weaker the headwind, the slower you will naturally decelerate. So if you've got a particularly strong headwind, you need to start the key a little bit later, and if you've got a particularly weak one, you need to start a little bit earlier. The reason for that is you've got something called the 60 seconds to live rule. You don't want to be in the hover or in fully jet-borne flights, that is, the majority of your lift is being generated by the engine and not by the wings, for more than 60 seconds. There's just an increased chance that the engine might fail, and obviously if you don't have any wing-generated lift, there is no option to glide. So you will just come down, and especially if you're operating around a fob, that means you could land on critical infrastructure for the operation and maybe mess it up for flight mates. So in that scenario, I should have started the key a little bit later, or I should have brought the nozzles back to say 77 and then brought them back to 82 once I was in a little bit closer. Now you can play with the nozzles to adjust your ground speed once you are established in jet-borne flight after the key. It is recommended that you do not. The reason for that is, especially if you're a VR user, you might accidentally grab the wrong lever and pull the wrong one back, and then you've lost all of your lift generated by your engine. And remember, the Harrier can descend faster in the hover than the engine can spool back up and generate that thrust, so there's no way you are going to recover from that. It is a difficult one to balance because you also want to balance your AOA, and as you saw there, it starts to read quite high, and once you're actually established in the hover, your AOA indicator is almost useless, because as you can see right now on the ground it's reading 16 units of AOA. Try and establish yourself at 150 feet over the over the designated landing area. This is called ballparking the landing, and essentially if you imagine maybe a football or rugby pitch size area around the designated landing area, you want to put the jet somewhere in that and just focus on that. If you focus on too fine of a point, you will overcorrect more and make mistakes. So just give yourself a really wide berth, pick the general area. Once you're over it, it's difficult, but you need to be looking left, right, and leaning over to have a look to estimate your position and try and correct your position as you descend down at 50 feet, or before you descend down at 50 feet, whichever you're comfortable with. Once you're at 50 feet, you need to make sure that you're over the spot, so fine-tune things, and you need to arrest your rate of descent as well. Either do that at the same time, or rest it first, and then fine-tune your positioning. Once you're ready to descend, you need to commit to the descent. As described in the press-up sortie, you don't want to bounce and potentially tip the plane. Again, you don't want to blow up a flight mate or a critical part of the infrastructure, so make sure that you descend with a continuous rate of descent, and once you're close to the ground, about 10 feet or so above the ground, completely close the throttle and allow the aircraft to essentially just drop itself onto the ground. Make sure to hold the toe brakes. I hope this video has been useful. If you have any questions, please contact me. Thank you.